Hello readers by eyes and by ears, this is Mari Chan and welcome back to my channel. Today we are continuing with the reading of Ballad of Sword and Wine Volume 1, also known as Jiu by Tang Jiu Qing. And yes, I went ahead and just looked really quickly. So in this case, because I mentioned that Qiang is sometimes spelled with a Q or a J, and most of the time it's pronounced with a J sound, but it is going to be Qiang, like it shows on the cover, obviously. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so yes, it's Tang Jiu. And we are starting with chapter 10 today. I honestly don't even remember if I said this in the previous video. Actually, no. Yep, I did. Never mind. Let's just get started, shall we? Chapter 10. Drunk. Xiao Jiming gathered his cloak around him as he waited under the hanging lantern. Zhao Hui, standing guard behind him, spoke up. He should have returned by now. The man who went to pick him up said the young master left him by himself on his horse. How is he still not back? Xiao Jiming huffed into the cold air and turned his face to the sky. Whenever he was unhappy at home, he would always take his horse for a gallop at the foot of Hongyuan Mountains, he said. Old habits die hard. At the very least, the imperial army is a real post, Zhao Hui said. Xiao Jiming shifted his gaze to him. Do you know my father's biggest regret? Zhao Hui shook his head. It's that Chr-yeh was born too late, Xiao Jiming said. 3 years ago, we were ambushed at the foot of Hongyuan Mountains. Before our father's reinforcements arrived, Chr-yeh led 20 cavalry who were supposed to be his personal guards and crossed the Hongjiang River in the dark. He trudged around in a muddy bog for half a night, setting fire to the Biansha provisions. When I saw him, he was filthy, and the wounds on his legs had festered. He was only 14 at the time. I asked if he was scared. He said he had a blast. Our father often said the Lu clan are the eagles of the desert, while the Xiao clan became the dogs of Li-Bei. I don't like this saying. But in recent years, the Xiao clan had gone into battle like chained dogs. It's never as satisfying as it was in the old days. These long years of fighting have drained the ferocity out of me. The Xiao clan are not dogs. But Chr-yeh is the only one of us who still possesses the heart of a wolf. He dreams of the mountains of Li-Bei, yet now he must stay in Chudu and forget the freedom of galloping across the plain. Both father and I have let him down. After a moment's silence, Zhao Hui looked at Xiao Jiming. Do not be so hard on yourself, Shi-tzu. The young master is naturally impetuous. He was never the best choice to continue your father's legacy. Whether he was born earlier or later doesn't matter. The reins of Li-Bei would never be his. The commander-in-chief must have the iron tenacity of a hammer forged by experience and willpower as steady as an anvil. The young master is not up to the task. Xiao Jiming was silent. The night wind set the lantern swinging. Master and subordinate waited in the dark another hour before they spied someone riding toward them in the distance. Herr Xiao! The man tumbled off his horse in his hurry to report. Something has happened to the young master. Zhao Hui's hand went instantly to his blade. Where? An hour earlier, the squad leader shoved a shackled Shun Zechuan down the steps. Sing! Sorry. Oh God. The squad leader prodded him from behind. Quick, sing a few lines for the Supreme Commander. Shun Zechuan didn't utter a note as he looked at the man squatting in the shadow of the wall. As soon as he saw the gerfalcon, his chest tightened. Without thought, he pressed his lips into a thin line and stood unmoving. Get over here, Chr-yeh ordered. Shun Zechuan exhaled, his breath white in the frigid air. He slowly shuffled forward to stand a short distance from Chr-yeh. Chr-yeh rose to his feet. Who is your mother? A dancer from Duanwu, Shun Zechuan replied. Then you know how to sing, don't you? Chr-yeh's gaze could chill a man to his bones. That old dog Shun might not have taught you, but with a woman like that, you must have learned something. I don't know. Shun Zichuan looked at the ground to escape his gaze, as if intimidated. Raise your head. Xiao Chhr-yeh nudged the lantern aside with his foot. Are you afraid of me? Shun Zichuan had no choice but to do so. He smelled alcohol. Fine, Xiao Chhr-yeh said. If you don't want a scene, get down and look for something for me. Spreading his hands, Shun Zichuan showed him the shackles he wore. Xiao Chhr-yeh frowned. Those can stay on. So Shun Zichuan squatted down and grabbed half-heartedly at a few handfuls of snow. Stand up again, Xiao Chhr-yeh ordered, staring coldly at the top of his head. Shun Zichuan braced his bound hands on his knees and stood up. Your legs seem fine. If you can bend and stand so easily, Xiao Chhr-yeh observed. Was the embroidered uniform guard too gentle with their flogging? Or is a worthless life easier to sustain? Naturally, it's because a worthless life is easier to sustain, Shun Zichuan said quietly. I was lucky. That makes no sense. Xiao Chhr-yeh pressed the tip of his riding crop to Shun Zichuan's chest. That kick was meant to end this life. Your martial arts foundation must be pretty good. At the touch of the riding crop, Shun Zichuan shuddered. Cowering back, he pleaded, I'm just hanging onto my last breath is all. Our Gongsa is a righteous man. Why make life difficult for a nobody like me? I've gotten what I deserve. Please spare me. Do you really mean that? Shun Zichuan sniffled with soft sobs. He nodded his head vigorously. Xiao Chhr-yeh retracted his riding crop. Words are easy. Who knows if they're true? How about this? Bark for me, and once I'm satisfied, I'll spare you. Shun Zichuan kept silent. The look in Xiao Chhr-yeh's eyes terrified the squad leader. He urged Shun Zichuan with a few anxious shoves. Face drained of color, Shun Zichuan said timidly, At least let me do it where no one else can see. Xiao Chhr-yeh didn't waste words. Move. Get rolling. The squad leader relaxed immediately, saying happily to Shun Zichuan, Get rolling. Yes, sir. We'll roll right away. Xiao Chhr-yeh's cutting gaze fell on the squad leader's face. The captain went weak at the knees. Pointing to himself, he said, Just me? Sure thing. Gritting his teeth, he curled himself into a ball and rolled a few times in the snow before standing up a short distance away. Shun Zichuan coyly shifted closer. He leaned in and whispered into Xiao Chhr-yeh's ear. Even if you spare me, do you think I will spare you? Shun Zichuan, what are you doing? Snow scattered into the air as Xiao Chhr-yeh gripped Shun Zichuan's bound hands, his expression scathing. So, the fox shows its tail. I was wondering about that pitiful act of yours. The two tumbled in the snow. Hands still trapped in handcuffs, Shun Zichuan landed a boot in Xiao Chhr-yeh's stomach and scrambled to brace himself. The emperor ordered me confined, yet the Xiao clan dares defy the throne and take my life. After tonight, Xiao Chhr-yeh dragged Shun Zichuan toward him by the shackles. Shun Zichuan crashed to the ground, snarling through clenched teeth. Every one of you are accomplices to the Xiao clan's rebellion. My death means little, but when I go to the grave, the whole imperial army will be buried with me. Xiao Chhr-yeh grabbed Shun Zichuan in a chokehold from behind, forcing his head up. He barked a laugh. You sure think highly of yourself. You imagine you're a precious treasure worth being buried with? Killing you is like pulling weeds. Struggling for breath, Shun Zichuan swiftly reached up and looped his shackles over the back of Xiao Chhr-yeh's neck, summoning all his strength to wrench him to the ground. Xiao Chhr-yeh was caught off guard, and as he scrambled, Shun Zichuan kicked him square in the chest. In an instant, their positions were reversed. Like pulling weeds, Shun Zichuan leaned down, finally meeting Xiao Qr-yeh eye to eye amid the tumult. "You squandered your opportunity," he spat hoarsely. "From here on out, we'll see who will be the hound and who the quarry." Xiao Qr-yeh seethed with murderous rage. "Who is bold enough to help you in secret? If I find them, I'll kill them." The squad leader, horrified at this sudden turn of events, rushed over. Your Excellency, you mustn't kill him." "That's right," Shun Zichuan cried. "The second young master means to kill me tonight." "Shut up." Xiao Qr-yeh attempted to smother him with a hand. To his shock, Shun Zichuan bit down mercilessly. He pinned Xiao Qr-yeh to the ground as his teeth tore through the fleshly web between Xiao Qr-yeh's thumb and forefinger. "That's a hard bite." "You think you can hide behind a tantrum?" Xiao Qr-yeh's voice was frosty. "No way are these the moves of someone on his last breath." When his exhortations had no effect, the squad leader cried out, "Pull them apart! Quick!" Blood oozed from between Shun Zichuan's teeth, but he refused to let go. Xiao Qr-yeh was perfectly sober now. He grabbed Shun Zichuan by the back of his collar and tried to drag him off. The pain in his hand felt like it would pierce straight through to his heart. Yet it was Shun Zichuan's eyes that seared themselves into Xiao Qr-yeh's memory. "Gongzi!" Zhao Hui called as he raced in on horseback. Xiao Qr-yeh turned and saw his elder brother as well, already dismounting and rushing toward them. Instantly, he was overcome with shame. It was as if he'd been stripped bare of his cultivated bravado and returned to his worthless primal state. Xiao Jiming dropped to one knee beside him, and Shun Zichuan immediately released Xiao Qr-yeh's hand. The skin between his thumb and forefinger was a mess of flesh and blood. The teeth marks sunk deep. Zhao Hui, close behind, saw the wound at once. "What happened here?" "Take him back inside." Xiao Jiming's voice was low. Zhao Hui dragged Shun Zichuan up and into the temple. "The young master is drunk." Xiao Jiming glanced at the squad leader. "Word of what happened tonight needn't spread. His Majesty will hear the apology from me directly." The captain kowtowed several times. "Of course, as you say." Xiao Jiming rose to leave. Zhao Hui had already shoved Shun Zichuan back into the temple. After appraising the situation, he turned to the squad captain. "Many thanks to our brothers in the Imperial Army tonight for escorting our young master back to the manor safe and sound. It's not easy standing guard on a winter night. I hope our brothers will accept my offer of a round of warm wine." The squad leader, terrified to offend him, very sensibly agreed. Only then did Xiao Jiming look silently at Xiao Qr-yeh. Xiao Qr-yeh hadn't even moved to clean the blood off his hand. By the time he opened his mouth to speak, his brother had already turned away and mounted his horse. "Dage," Xiao Qr-yeh called to him softly. Xiao Jiming heard him, but rode away without a word. For those who may not know, footnote 17 for Dage, this is a term of address for one's eldest brother. Chapter 11. New Year. Inside the temple, Shun Zichuan's shackles were removed. He stretched his wrists as he listened patiently to the squad leader's grumbling. Gahng entered a short time later, pushing a wheelbarrow. He nimbly unloaded several jugs of wine for the Imperial Army before sidling up to Shun Zichuan, his linen wrap concealing his face. After ordering Gahng to finish tidying the courtyard before New Year's Day, the squad leader headed outside to warn the guards on duty to keep silent about the night's events. Only then did Gahng take Shun Zichuan's arm. "Are you injured?" "No." Shun Zichuan rubbed the nape of his neck, where Xiao Qr-yeh's fingers had left livid red marks. "Shifu," he began. "Where does it hurt?" Shun Zichuan shook his head. He thought things over a moment, then said, "He's strong and fierce, and his punches and kicks are powerful. The style felt familiar." Astonishment spread over Gahng's burned face. "Our G-style boxing has never been shared with outsiders. After he struck, I didn't dare counter his moves with my own." The taste of blood seemed to linger in Shun Zichuan's mouth. He ran his tongue over the edges of his teeth and considered. I was afraid he might notice something, so I didn't fight seriously, but just cowering and playing dumb didn't deceive him either. Shifu, why does he hate me so much? Xianxiang mentioned the current political situation, but should the Hua clan and the Empress Dowager not be the ones he hates most? That bastard was drunk. Gahng spat with loathing. Bullies always pick on the weak, so he turned his hate on you. Shun Zechuan extended his left hand. He was looking for this. Shifu, do you recognize it? Lying in his palm was a well-born thumb ring made of bone. Soldiers with exceptional upper body strength often wield great bows. They wear thumb rings like this when they draw. Gahng studied it. This kind of wear and tear almost certainly comes from drawing the mighty bows of the Li-Bei armored cavalry. But second young master Xiao isn't in the army and doesn't ride into battle. What's he wearing this for? Xiao Qr-yeh went home and lost himself in sleep. Loo Gwahng-bye made himself at home in a chair. You've barely landed an official position, and you're already out harassing people. I saw Ji-Ming leave the manor earlier heading for the palace. There was a lump in Xiao Qr-yeh's throat. He burrowed beneath the quilt. I had too much to drink. We'll be leaving the capital in a few days, Loo Gwahng-bye said, earnest. You know you can't go on like this. What are you going to do if all this drinking ruins your martial arts and you waste away? Xiao Qr-yeh was silent. Put yourself in your brother's shoes. They wounded his heart at the banquet last night. He's running himself ragged seeing to Li-Bei's military affairs, all while worrying about your sister-in-law and the baby. And now he has to leave you behind. He feels terrible. Everyone sings his praises in public, but each time he sets out for battle, they secretly hope he never returns. Year after year, he leads troops onto the field for these people. He doesn't say anything, but he's flesh and blood like anyone else. How could it not hurt? Flinging off the covers, Xiao Qr-yeh heaved a sigh. You think I don't know all that? What do you know? Loo Gwahng-bye threw a tangerine at Xiao Qr-yeh. If you know, get up and apologize to your brother. Xiao Qr-yeh caught the tangerine and sat up. When Loo Gwahng-bye saw the bandage on his hand, he couldn't help but laugh. Peeling his own tangerine, he said, What did you go and provoke him for? Are you satisfied now you've been bitten? I told him to sing me a song, Xiao Qr-yeh said, but he claimed I wanted his life. The guy's a piece of work. You're a piece of work yourself, starting a fight with a prisoner in the middle of the street. You're lucky Ji-Ming got there in time, or there would be uproar in the city today. Are you badly hurt? That guy must have been born in the year of the dog, Xiao Qr-yeh grumbled, staring at the teeth marks on his hand. Xiao Ji-Ming didn't return until afternoon, with Zhao Hui in tow. As they approached, they saw Xiao Qr-yeh waiting under the eaves. Tage, Xiao Qr-yeh called out. Xiao Ji-Ming handed his cloak to Zhao Hui. The maidservant brought out a copper water basin, and Xiao Ji-Ming washed his hands, paying no mind to his little brother. Zhao Hui peered at Xiao Qr-yeh. Gongse, aren't you going to inspect the Imperial Army today? Go get your Supreme Commander token, then come back for dinner. I'll go if Tage tells me to, Xiao Qr-yeh said. Xiao Ji-Ming dried his hands and finally looked at him. I didn't tell you to go last night, but didn't you go anyway? I ran in the wrong direction. Xiao Qr-yeh said. I meant to come home. Xiao Ji-Ming threw the handkerchief back onto the tray. Very well. Go get your token, then come back for dinner. Only then did Xiao Qr-yeh leave. Ever since the Imperial Army had been relieved from its duty of guarding the capital, the former operations office had fallen into terrible despair. When Xiao Qr-yeh arrived on horseback, he caught sight of several men in short pants and waist sashes chatting as they basked in the sun. Their idleness bespoke none of the valor of an army. Xiao Qr-yeh dismounted and strode into the courtyard, riding crop in hand. In the center of the courtyard was a balding pine tree, ringed by mounds of snow that had been carelessly shoved aside. Icicles no one had knocked down dangled from the walkway eaves, and the rooftop tiles were long overdue for repair. This army was, in a word, broke. Xiao continued inside. The wooden plaque hanging over the entryway had peeling paint. He went down several steps and reached the main hall. Lifting the curtain with his riding crop, he bent to enter. The men sitting around the stove cracking peanuts whipped around to look at him. Xiao set his riding crop on the table, pulled aside a chair, and sat. "So, everyone's here," he said. As one, the men stood with a clatter, noisily trampling the shells on the ground. Most were over 40, hailing from old military households. Even after years in the Imperial Army, they still had no greater talents than shamelessness and petty extortion. Now that Xiao had appeared, they sized him up and exchanged sly glances, each harboring motives of their own. "Gongzi." A likely-looking fellow wiped his hands on his robe and smiled. "We've been waiting for you to come collect your token today." "And here I am," Xiao said. "Where's the token?" The man chuckled. "We waited for your excellency this morning, but you didn't come. The Ministry of Works was calling for laborers, so Assistant Commander Cao took the token to go deploy the men. Whenever he gets back, I'll send someone to deliver it to your excellency's manor." Xiao returned his smile. "And you, good sir, are?" "Me?" the man answered. "Just call me Lao Chun. I used to be a company commander overseeing 100 men in Dicheng. Thanks to Lord Hua-Shi-san, who recommended me for promotion, I'm now the registrar of the Imperial Army." I hope that's not Shi-san as in 13, which is Shi-san. But anyway. How strange. One hand draped over the armrest, Xiao turned halfway to look at Lao Chun. One rank beneath the supreme commander of the Imperial Army should be the vice commander. How did the token end up in the hands of an assistant commander? Your Excellency may not be aware, but when Lao Chun saw the intensity of Xiao regard, he straightened imprudently from his deferential bow. After Zhongbo's defeat last year, the transport of grain levies from Jianheng was blocked. That led to a food shortage in Chengdu. The Ministry of Personnel didn't have enough to pay salaries to all the officials, so they cut the staff in the Imperial Army office in half. Presently, we don't have a vice commander, so next in rank is Assistant Commander Cao. There are only a few of us left here. So what you're saying is that anyone can get their hands on the Supreme Commander's token? Usually, we just take the token and go. Tasks from the Ministry of Works can't wait. They need men to carry lumber into the palace. Our position is low, and our words carry little weight. We can't afford to offend anyone, so what choice do we have? Lao Chun started passing the buck. If this practice offends your excellency, you'd do well to clear it up with the Ministry of Works. As the Supreme Commander, why must I explain myself to the Ministry of Works? Asked Xiao. The Imperial Army reports to the Emperor. The 6 ministries sought help, and we provided it. It was out of camaraderie that we never settled accounts all this time. But from now on, if anyone wants for manpower, they'll give a proper explanation of the task and a clear account of the schedule before any of my men are expected to lift a finger. That's all very well said. Lao Chun and the others laughed. But we aren't in charge of patrols anymore. We're just errand runners and odd jobbers. If we lend a hand when the 6 ministries call for it, at least we're still useful. Besides, it's been like this for years, and His Majesty's never said a word against it. Friends in court are better than money in your pocket, Gongzi. You come from Libe, but the Imperial Army is nothing like your armored cavalry, or even like the 8 great battalions. Something simply won't work here. Xiao stood. Who did you say recommended you to this post? Lao Chun glowed as he straightened proudly. He was only too happy to repeat it. Lord Hua-Shi-san, your excellency must know him. He's the Empress Dowager's grandson of common birth, and Third Lady Hua's... Chie lifted his foot and kicked him squarely in the chest. 1 second, Lao Chun was puffing himself up. The next, he was toppling into the table and chairs. A teacup smashed against the ground, splashing tea across the floor and jolting Lao Chun back to his senses. Trembling, he knelt. "A loafer raised by some Hua concubine," Chie said, sweeping away peanut shells on the table. "Someone fit only to carry my boots. And you think he's a powerful patron? He's small potatoes. I asked for the supreme ruler's token. Instead, you lecture me on how things are done. Are you so blinded by your meager gains that you can't see who stands before you? Starting today, my word is law in the imperial army." Lao Chun kowtowed at once. It was a rude awakening. He hastily called out, "Argongza! Argongza!" "Who the fuck is your Argongza?" Chie's eyes held a piercing chill. "As supreme commander of the imperial army, I hold your life in my hands. You dare put on airs and act like some local thug? The Ministry of Works needs manpower for labor, but all the men come from the imperial army. If there were no money in it, would you find it worthwhile to throw yourselves at their feet? The men at the bottom are sent to work themselves to the bone, but you've certainly kept yourself fat without lifting a finger. What? Huasher-san is backing you, so you think you have a token of immunity?" I wouldn't dare. Lao Chun shuffled forward on his knees. "My lord, this humble subordinate was just talking." "Before half an incense stick burns," Chie said, "I need to see the token of command, a full staff register, and 20,000 men. If anything is missing, you gentlemen may bring me your heads in its place." Lao Chun leapt to his feet and bolted to the door. Days later, the frontier generals departed the capital. The Xiande emperor led a convoy of court officials to see Xiao Jiming off. He trod through the heavy snow, coughing intermittently, to take Xiao Jiming by the arm. The emperor was frightfully thin under his thick cloak. "After you leave today, Jiming, we won't meet again until next year. The conflict on Li Bei's border continues, and though the Biansha horsemen have retreated after their defeat, they refuse to submit to our great Zhou. The desperate greed of the 12 tribes is clear for all to see. As our trusted official and a fearless general of the empire, we implore you to take care and remain vigilant. We relate to the rescue, yet your majesty still shows us such great favor. Both my father and this humble subject are struck by the honors your majesty has bestowed upon us. From this day forward, Li Bei is at your majesty's beck and call, ready to risk life and limb at your word. Since your father fell ill, it's been many years since we've seen each other." The emperor slowly turned to take in the massive crowd gathered within the city gates, then raised his eyes to the magnificent palace that had towered over the capital for 100 years. "As for the Shun clan remnant, we failed the loyal soldiers who gave their lives on the battlefields," he said softly. "We have been confined to our sickbed too long. There are too many matters on which our hands are tied." Xiao Jiming followed his gaze. After a time, he said, "A storm rages in Chudu. Please be mindful of your health, your majesty." The Xiande emperor slowly loosened his grip on Xiao Jiming. "Good man. Go." Loo Gwahng-bye rode out of the city. As expected, Xiao Chr-yeh was waiting alone at the pavilion at the foot of the mountain. Sitting astride his horse, he whistled at Xiao Chr-yeh from afar. "Brat, your big brothers are leaving." Turbulence seethes below the surface. Only wary travelers stay afloat. Be careful out there. Footnote number 18. That line comes from the poem Dreaming of Li Bai 2 by Dufu. If you have something to say, spit it out. Why are you reciting poetry? Loo Gwahng-bye laughed heartily. Be patient. You'll go home too one day. That's up to fate. Xiao Chr-yeh smiled in return. The sound of hooves rang out behind them. Loo Gwahng-bye looked back. As soon as he saw the rider kicking up snow, Loo Gwahng-bye turned his horse and shouted, Grand Marshal, let's ride together. Juyin slowed. Her hair... Oh, her? Oh, okay. Her black hair was pulled into a high ponytail, and she wore a sturdy coat over a worn outer robe with a long sword strapped to her back. She traveled light. Going by appearances, she could have been an ordinary woman skilled in martial arts, traversing the world under her own power. Only after the flurries of snow settled could one see that she possessed an extraordinarily charming face. "That horse of yours is second-rate." She raised her eyebrows and grinned, her commanding air immediately evident. "Will it be able to keep up with mine?" Loo Gwahng-bye was quite fond of his horse. "Perhaps he isn't as fierce as your steed, but he's a good lad who's seen his share of battle. Let's have a race, and we'll test his mettle." "Now, that mount looks like a rare one." Jew-yeen lifted her chin in Chr-yeh's direction. "Swap with me?" Chr-yeh stroked his horse's mane. "No thanks. No matter how I look at it, I'll be the loser." Jew-yeen raised her hand and threw something to Chr-yeh, who caught it with both hands. It was an unusually heavy executioner's blade, still in its sheath. "Li-bei raised some fine battle steeds for Tidong last year, thanks to you. That thing was forged by the best craftsmen in our camp and cost me a good bit in precious materials, too," Jew-yeen said. "How about it? Not losing out now, huh?" Chr-yeh weighed it in his hands and laughed. "Marshal, from now on, you're my dearest older sister. The blade I brought from home is decent but far too light. This one feels much better in the hand." "Sister?" Jew-yeen echoed. "Show some respect. Wait till you unsheathe the blade. You'll be calling me Grandpa." "Does this blade have a name?" Chr-yeh asked. "I actually thought of one," Jew-yeen said. "Those who speak of a wolf's ruthlessness speak of an animal appetite. Isn't that just perfect for you? Why not Wolf's Fang?" Loo Gwahng-bye countered. "The word ruthlessness is a little too vicious. He's only vicious." Jew-yeen snapped her riding crop and her horse bolted. Without looking back, she called, "A son of Li-bei should be precisely that. Vicious." The mass of troops in the distance had already started moving. A sea of red tasseled spears from the Tidong garrison troops followed at Jew-yeen's heels, surging toward the eastern plains. Loo Gwahng-bye could tarry no longer. He waved a hasty goodbye to Chr-yeh, then spurred his horse to catch up. Chr-yeh heard the thunder of hooves so loud against the ground it seemed as if the earth itself quaked underfoot. He looked out into the distance and saw his older brother in the lead. Like a black tide, the familiar armored cavalry of Li-bei rose up along the snowy plains and swept north. The Gerfalcon cut through the air to chase after them. It wheeled over the armored cavalry and screeched. Chr-yeh stood, clutching his blade, watching until they disappeared into the snowy expanse. Shun Zuchuan's wandering mind was pulled back by a rasp from Grand Mentor Chee. "The various generals have returned to their bases, and Chudu is once again at an impasse." Grandmaster Chee, his loose hair spread over his shoulders, craned his neck to look at Shun Zuchuan. "Time is short. You mustn't sit back and accept your fate as a turtle trapped in a jar." "I'm as much at their mercy as meat on the chopping board." Shun Zuchuan looked up. "Xianxiang, is there really a chance I could leave this place?" "Fortune and misfortune come hand in hand. Confinement may not necessarily be a bad thing." Grand Mentor Chee unstoppered his gourd and took a few gulps of wine. "It's easier to hide your strengths behind closed doors. You will have plenty of opportunities to display them in the future." In the distance, the palace bells tolled. A new year had begun. Chapter 12. Duanwu Festival. 5 years passed in the blink of an eye. It was midsummer in the 8th year of Xiande. The round-collared robe of the Secretary of Ministry of Revenue, Wang Xian, was drenched in sweat. He sat as if his chair was lined with pins and needles. Not for the first time, he lifted his black gauze official's cap to wipe his brow. "Lord Xiao, Wang Xian hemmed and hawed. It's not that the Ministry of Revenue doesn't wish to disperse the funds, but at the moment, the current expenditure of the Treasury has yet to be tallied. Without Pahn Gong's authorization, there's really no way we can release the sum. It takes time to tally the accounts, certainly. Xiao sipped his tea. I'm waiting, aren't I? Take your time. Wang Xian's throat bobbed. He glanced at Xiao, as composed as ever, and then at the Imperial Army soldiers standing stock still on the veranda outside. Your Excellency, Wang Xian said, nearly begging, the day is hot, and I feel terrible keeping the soldiers waiting outside. Let me treat everyone to some cold drinks. We have ice. The Imperial Army has done nothing to deserve your consideration. Xiao showed him a shallow smile. We're sturdy men, used to manual labor. What's a few hours of standing? Pay us no mind, Your Excellency. Focus on your accounting. Gripping his accountant book, Wang Xian held his breath over the page for a long interval. Still, he couldn't bring himself to lower it. The emperor had fallen seriously ill in early spring of that year. In response, the Empress Dowager ordered a temple built in the palace where she could recite Buddhist scriptures and gather blessings for His Majesty. The Ministry of Works needed to ship large quantities of lumber from Duanwu for construction, and to save money, they had called upon the Imperial Army to transport it. Not long after, Secretariat Elder Hai came out in opposition to the project. In the face of his disapproval, the Empress Dowager withdrew her plan. By then, however, the lumber was already in the capital. The hole from this abandoned endeavor had never been filled in the Ministry of Works budget, and thus, for 2 months, they had dragged out the matter, delaying payment to the Imperial Army. Money was tight everywhere. Had the state treasury been full, there would have been no issue. Who would be willing to cross second young master Xiao over such a small sum? But the Ministry of Revenue was destitute. Last year, for the Empress Dowager's birthday, they had lavished close to 1 million taels of silver on the banquet and pecuniary awards alone. Wang Xian set aside his brush and decided to stick his neck out. Your Excellency, there's no way to settle the payment right now. I'll be honest. Look at the current accounts. The expenses tallied so far this year are well over the budgeted amount. Our own salaries are up in the air. We have no money to give you. Even if you stab me, Wang Mingshun, for saying so, there's nothing I can do. So, the provisions of the 8 great battalions are distributed as usual without delay. But when it comes to the Imperial Army, you're flat broke. We all serve the Emperor here, but it seems Xiao-ANNE is the only bastard doomed to hold this debt and wait for the treasury to fill itself. Chr-yeh tossed the teacup onto the table with a clatter. Every year, the Ministry of Revenue cries poverty. But how is that my problem? We do the work, and you pay the money. It's right there in black and white. The work is done, so payment must be made. As for anything else, I don't want to hear it. It's not my responsibility. If everyone has to forgive the problems of the Ministry of Revenue, what's left for you to do? Best vacate the position and let someone else take over. Wang Xian sprang to his feet, livid. If we're all serving the Emperor, why is Your Excellency intent on pushing me into a corner? Who would be unwilling to settle the account if we had the money? If the Imperial Army is so capable, why bother with manual labor? Go do what the 8 great battalions do. Let's see who is so bold as to withhold your money then. Just as the atmosphere threatened to tip into violence, another voice rang out. There's no need for anger, Lord Wang. The second young master is simply a forthright man who speaks his mind. The newcomer took off his wide-brimmed hat and wiped his hands with a handkerchief. This humble one is the Chief Supervisory Secretary from the Office of Scrutiny for Revenue, Xiu-OW. I'm here regarding this very account. The Chief Supervising Secretary of the Office of Scrutiny for Revenue was merely a 7th-rank position, technically not even considered a court official in Chengdu. However, it was a unique post. Not only did the office holder supervise the works in progress of the Ministry of Revenue, He also participated in the reviews and appraisals of officials that took place every 6 years. On top of that, he could bypass any of the 6 ministries to appeal directly to the emperor himself. This was a person Wang Xian could not afford to offend. He swallowed his pride. How could I be angry? The imperial army has contributed so much. I don't want Lord Xiao to have worked for nothing. But Yanqing, just look at this account. We simply don't have the funds. Xue Xiuzhou, courtesy name Yanqing, had a scholarly and refined bearing. He spoke without even looking at the accounts. I'm aware of the difficulties faced by the Ministry of Revenue. How about this, our Gongzi? The city of Quancheng shipped us a batch of silk recently. We'll settle your account with an equivalent value in silk. Would that be acceptable? It seemed it was. The instant Chr-yeh was gone, Wang Xian's expression turned cold. He's not demanding payment for the imperial army, he told Xue Xiuzhou. More likely he's squandering it himself. Ever since this second young master took up the reins of the imperial army, he's been leading a life of drunken debauchery. Yet he pushes us to our limit every time, unwilling to show a shred of empathy. Xue Xiuzhou smiled and said nothing. Chr-yeh left the Ministry of Revenue's office and rode toward Donglong Street. He was much taller now than 5 years ago. His youthful drive and vigor somewhat faded. Prince Chu had been waiting for him all morning. As soon as he spied Chr-yeh, the prince started badgering him. Where the hell have you been? I nearly died of boredom. Fooling around. Chr-yeh sat and gulped down a cold drink. On seeing the basin of ice set nearby to cool the room, he sighed and stretched out on the settee. This is so comfortable. My head is spinning from the heat outside. I'm going to take a nap. You can't! Li Jianheng waved his bamboo fan vigorously, the front of his robe wide open in the heat. He sighed. At least let me finish talking before you sleep. Who knew what mischief Chr-yeh had been up to all night, but he was obviously flagging. He hummed absent-mindedly. Li Jianheng sipped some chilled wine out of a cup held in a courtesan's slender hand. Do you remember that girl I told you about? The one I was keeping in my villa 5 years ago? I was preparing to take her as my own, until that son of a bitch Xiao Fuzi took her and offered her to the castrated bastard Pahn Rugui. Chr-yeh murmured acknowledgement. Well, Li Jianheng continued, more animated by the second, I recently left the capital to escape the summer heat and saw her near the villa. The girl's kept herself so smooth and tender, even lovelier than 5 years ago. My heart was pounding just looking at her. How I hate those eunuchs. That thieving son of a bitch came out of nowhere and broke up a blossoming romance. He thinks that's the end of it? No way. Chr-yeh yawned. Are we brothers or not? Li Jianheng fumed. Help me think of a way to get back at him. Maybe we can't touch Pahn Rugui, but that Xiao Fuzi needs a good thrashing. Chr-yeh was truly exhausted. What do you want to do? Have him dragged out of the palace? Li Jianheng pushed aside the courtesan waiting on him and snapped his fan shut. The Duanwu festival is around the corner. His Majesty will be at the West Gardens to watch the dragon boat race. Pahn Rugui will doubtless be there too. Where he goes, Xiao Fuzi follows. We can lure him out during the horse race and beat him to death. Okay. Chr-yeh seemed to have dropped off. Son, did you hear me? Bad idea to beat him to death, Chr-yeh said without opening his eyes. If you make an enemy of Pahn Rugui over this, you'll be in for a world of trouble. But we can at least give him a beating, right? Li Jianheng whined. If I don't vent my anger, I won't even be able to eat. What's up with you lately? You always look half asleep. What are you getting up to at night? And why did you send away the virgin I picked for you last time? Chr-yeh acknowledged Li Jianheng's words with a wave of his hand. There was no ring on his thumb, but the bite between his thumb and forefinger had left its mark. When Li Jianheng started on something else, Chr-yeh turned a deaf ear to it all. A few days later, on the occasion of Duanwu, the long-absent Xiande emperor dragged his sickly bones to the West Gardens. The imperial ladies accompanying him donned gauzy robes of sheer silk, while Ji-lei and the commander-in-chief of the 8 great battalions, Shi-Gu-an, jointly escorted the emperor. As the imperial army had nothing but spare time, they invited Xiao Chr-yeh along as well. Xiao Chr-yeh was last to arrive. In keeping with custom, the Xiande emperor had already hung up the willow branch to ward against evil and was waiting for the horse race to begin. The court of imperial entertainments, as part of the entourage, served sticky rice dumplings and pastries at each seat. From a spot on the prince's seat, Li Jianheng waved Xiao Chr-yeh over. Xiao Chr-yeh tossed his riding crop to his right-hand man, Chen Yang, who followed a few steps behind him. He loosened his armed guards, and he took his seat. "What took you so long? The anxiety is killing me," Li Jianheng complained, clutching the bamboo fan he favored. "You're anxious every day," Xiao Chr-yeh shot back. "You sure you're all right?" "I'm just used to saying it," Li Jianheng responded, fanning himself. "Look, see that? Xiao Fuzi is serving over there." Xiao Chr-yeh followed his gaze and saw Xiao Fuzi beaming as he spoke into Pahn Ruguy's ear. "Hang back later," he said. "We'll get someone to give him that beating." Xiao Fuzi stepped onto the edge of the latrine pit an hour later, ready to relieve himself. Without warning, his vision went black. Someone had thrown a sack over his head. "Hey!" Xiao Fuzi shrieked, but was quickly knocked down with a blow to the neck. Li Jianheng wasted no time. He lifted his robe and started kicking him. Xiao Fuzi, gagged by the sack, groaned in pain as he writhed on the ground. The race nearby was nearing its midpoint. No one heard a thing. After beating Xiao Fuzi for the better part of an hour, Chen Yang stopped Li Jianheng, who still hadn't had his fill. Chen Yang shot a glance at the prince's manor guards behind them, and they hurriedly darted off with the sack. "Your Highness," he said, "he would have died if you continued. Perhaps next time." Li Jianheng straightened his robe and glanced at Chen Yang. "Where are they dumping him?" "The Supreme Commander ordered us to dump him in the woods by the lake. Once the banquet begins, the serving eunuchs will pass that way and he will be freed." Li Jianheng spat on the ground where Xiao Fuzi had suffered and finally returned to his seat. By the start of the banquet, Li Jianheng had forgotten all about the little eunuch. Xiao Chr-yeh kept an eye out, looking over occasionally at Pahn Rugui, but saw no sign of Xiao Fuzi. "He was probably humiliated and ran back to change his clothes," Li Jianheng said between bites. "Eunuchs who serve before the emperor have a terrible fear of appearing dirty and being disdained by the masters. Do you want to come to my villa in a few days for some fun? You can see that little lady I was talking about, too." "I'm busy," Xiao Chr-yeh said, sipping his cold tea. Li Jianheng snickered. "Still putting on an act, even in front of me? You? Busy? The imperial army is on the verge of dissolution. What could possibly keep you busy in such an idle position?" Xiao Chr-yeh laughed in return. "Busy drinking." His eyes were fixed on the tea in his hand. His side profile revealed the flippant quirk of his mouth. "The internal reviews are starting in autumn. I have to buy a few rounds if I want to hold onto this idle position." Being human, Li Jianheng tapped the table with his chopsticks, is about living in luxury and shunning productivity. The constant fighting, the so-called Pahn faction, the Hua clan, aren't they tired? Where's the pleasure in that? "Yeah." Xiao Chr-yeh's grin grew wicked. "Isn't that just asking for a hard time? Having fun is life's greatest satisfaction." Well, that's living true to the poem. Li Jianheng matched his sly expression. "So what's the deal with this review? Who would dare deny my brother his post? You were personally appointed by His Majesty. We loaf on imperial orders. How about this? I'll host a flower viewing feast at my residence before autumn, and we'll invite them all." "There's no hurry." Xiao Chr-yeh cast his eyes over the west gardens and spotted a familiar roof behind the cascade of overlapping eaves. He frowned. "This place is rather close to the Temple of Guilt." Still thinking about it, huh? It's been ages since you lost that thumb ring. Xiao Chih-yeh rubbed his thumb out of habit. That Shun clan remnant has been locked up for 5 years. There's been no news of him all this time. His Majesty never even inquired whether the boy died or went insane. Li Jianheng said, If I were locked in there, forget 5 years, I'd have cracked in a week. The scar on Xiao Chih-yeh's hand ached. He'd no desire to bring up that person. The sound of drums rose by the lakeside. Li Jianheng tossed down his chopsticks and jumped to his feet. Let's go. The dragon boat race is starting. They're definitely taking bets. Xiao Chih-yeh made to rise when he saw Ji-lei hurry through the crowd and lean over to whisper in Pahn Ruguy's ear. Pahn Rugui whipped his head around to stare at him. An instant later, he banged heavily on the table. Xiao Chih-yeh shot a swift glance at Chunyang. My lord, Chunyang began, stunned. Your Majesty. Ji-lei was already kneeling before the emperor, his voice carrying. I'm afraid the dragon boat race cannot go on. Just now, when this humble one was patrolling the grounds with the embroidered uniform guard, we fished Xiao Fuzi, a eunuch of the imperial palace, from the water. The Xiande emperor coughed violently. Pahn Rugui stepped forward to stroke his back. When the coughing subsided, the emperor managed. What was he doing in the water? Ji-lei raised his head. It wasn't clear if he looked to the emperor or the empress dowager. He drowned, he answered, voice heavy. A commotion broke out among the palace ladies, who covered their gasps with silk handkerchiefs. Li Jianheng had knocked over the teacup on his table. In a panic, he picked it up and looked at Xiao Chih-yeh. I swear I didn't mean it. Chapter 13. Little Cicada. Xiao Chih-yeh righted the lid of the teacup, carefully not looking at Li Jianheng. Don't fret, he said. Li Jianheng slumped back in his chair, scared out of his wits. With His Majesty here, and the guards so watchful, how could someone simply drown like that? The Empress Dowager asked. Your Majesty, Ji-lei addressed her, this humble subject has already sent the corpse for the coroner's examination. We will have more details soon. What do you mean? The specter of constant illness had cast a pall over the Xiande emperor. He frowned gloomily. Was there something strange about his death? He was covered in bruises, Your Majesty, Ji-lei replied. He had clearly received a beating before he went into the water. Xiao Fuzi was a palace eunuch, but held no important post in the 24 yamen. He was only His Majesty's personal eunuch. Footnote number 19, 24 yamen, an institution of eunuchs serving the emperor and his household in matters of household administration and domestic comforts. If he was tortured, then I'm afraid the murderer might have more sinister motives. The Xiande emperor rose, supporting himself on the edge of the table. We have only just stepped out of the palace, he said coldly, and somebody so impatient. Your Majesty. Hai Liang Yi stepped forward and knelt. The embroidered uniform guard and the 8 great battalions are on rotation duty today. If the eunuch's murderer really had grander designs, would he have done such a sloppy job of it? Xiao Fuzi often left the palace on errands to purchase this or that. It's not impossible for him to have made personal enemies outside. I'm afraid I disagree, Zhenshi, Secretariat Elder Hua Siqian said from his seat. Any man who dares strike this close to the throne plainly has no regard for His Majesty or the officials here. What commoner outside of the palace would have the gall? Xiao Chih-yeh sat stock still as the gears turned in his mind. Chunyang had dragged Xiao Fuzi into the woods at noon. Within the time it took an incense stick to burn, the eunuchs carrying banquet dishes and the 8 great battalions patrol should have passed by. Countless people would have left their seats to change clothes, drink tea, or make a trip to the latrine. The guests present today were of the highest status. Moreover, the accompanying guards and eunuchs all had the right to move freely within the garden. As all these people were going to and fro, someone only needed to give Xiao Fuzi a light kick, and he would have drowned in the pond. At this point, the thorniest issue was not the bruises on Xiao Fuzi's body, but the fact that Jile had changed the narrative, turning this petty murder case into suspected treason. Xiao Chr-yeh rested a fingertip on the lid of his teacup. This fire must never spread to Prince Chu. The emperor was gravely ill, and even the court of imperial physicians was at its wits' end. Not one could predict the moment heavens ordained would depart this world, and the Xiande emperor had no heirs. Once the inevitable came to pass, Li-Jianheng would be next in line for succession. Today, Xiao Chr-yeh had been too careless. Li-Jianheng's absence from the banquet earlier was glaring. He couldn't dismiss it with a perfunctory excuse. The Xiao clan was already on thin ice. If he were suspected of bringing their swords to bear in the matter of succession, the mere existence of 120,000 Li-Bei cavalry would be enough to drop the executioner's blade on Xiao Jiming's neck. The situation had snowballed. It was already an avalanche bearing down on him. He had to stop it. Xiao Chr-yeh flung down his teacup, shattering it on the table. The sound rang out crisp and clear, drawing glances from everyone at the banquet. Looking at him apprehensively, Li-Jianheng stuttered, "C'an." Xiao Chr-yeh rose from his seat and strode toward the throne. Sinking to his knees, he declared, "Your Majesty, this humble subject daren't hide this from you. The one who ordered this man's beating was I." The Xiande emperor fixed his gaze on him. "He was but a palace eunuch. What grudge did you bear him that you would go so far?" Jile also looked askance at him. "Lord Xiao, this is a matter of grave importance. You mustn't take the blame for another simply because of personal ties." "What grave importance?" Xiao Chr-yeh said offhandedly. "This humble subject sees no crime here. So what if I beat a lowly eunuch? I am the supreme commander of the imperial army and a second-rank official. Don't tell me I have to put up with insolence from that bastard." "To incite such fury from Argongza, this must be no ordinary grudge," Hua Siqian said. "Except Xiao Fuzi doesn't usually cross your path. What happened to anger you so?" "The Secretariat Elder is unaware of this," Xiao Chr-yeh began. "But on my way to the drill grounds a few months ago, that bastard sedan blocked my horse's way. You ought to have seen the pompous display he put on. I'd have thought it was Pahn Gong himself had he not lifted the curtain. I offered a few words of rebuke, and he boldly mouthed off to me. What real man would allow himself to be humiliated by a filthy, castrated wretch right there in the street? I doubt anyone here could stomach it in silence." The assembled guests flinched at Xiao Chr-yeh's choice of words. All eyes turned to Pahn Rugui, standing conspicuously by the emperor's side. As the Xiande emperor deliberated, the empress dowager chimed in. "Be that as it may, killing at the slightest provocation is not the behavior of a gentleman." These words seemed to move Pahn Rugui to tears. The gray-haired man knelt, his eyes red-rimmed. "Your Majesty's mercy is a grace from above. We servants are lowly creatures. How could we compare to the second young master? Xiao Fuzi had been spoiled rotten. He was ignorant of etiquette when encountering military officials of the court. Even after receiving the second young master's guidance, he remained unrepentant. This servant has been remiss in his instruction. As his teacher, I am to blame for the faults of the child." His tone was conciliatory, but the law was clear. Eunuchs were required to dismount and kowtow in greeting upon meeting a minister or official of the court. The Empress Dowager was a staunch Buddhist. She was greatly displeased at the wanton taking of lives. She turned to the Xiande emperor. "It has ever been said that all men are equal in the eyes of the law. Whether it was perpetrated to satisfy sentiment or reason, Xiao Chr-yeh's unruly violence cannot be treated lightly. Besides, the Xiao clan are known to be loyal and upright men. The Prince of Li-Bei sent his son to Chudu to be raised under your Majesty's eye. If we indulge him until he thinks himself above the law, we will have disappointed the Prince of Li-Bei who left him in our care." Jile, too, was indignant. Unwilling to let the matter go, he spoke up. "The second young master has always been friendly with Prince Chu. As for this act tonight, His Highness is also... This humble subject is not finished. Chr-yeh cut him off. I said I was the one who beat him, but I didn't kill him. Your Majesty, I had indeed intended to take his life to vent my fury, but when His Highness Prince Chu found out, he persuaded me against it. The beating today was meant to be carried out by my guards on the sly, yet His Highness noticed something amiss and left his seat to save Xiao-Fuzi's life. With Prince Chu standing by, this humble subject didn't dare rebuff His Highness's teachings, and thus I let Xiao-Fuzi off with his life. As for his drowning, I found it strange as well. Who would take up my grudge and do such an unwise thing? Lord Ji, Chr-yeh turned to Ji-lei, his eyes faintly gleaming. The embroidered uniform guard is usually meticulous and impeccable in their work. This eunuch was left just at the edge of the road today, yet he managed to dodge the patrols and drown in the pond. Perhaps he could not orient himself with his head covered and tumbled in himself. A good point. Huilian agreed. A person fell into the pond, and the embroidered uniform guard, though they walked back and forth patrolling the grounds, was none the wiser. If assassins were to infiltrate the West Gardens today, they mightn't notice that either. Ji-lei didn't dare stir up any more trouble. He dropped to the ground and kowtowed a few times, panicked. Your Majesty, the embroidered uniform guard has our own constraints. The guards are sharing patrol duty with the 8th grade battalions today. We organize manpower carefully when relieving each squad. We would never neglect the tiniest detail. The military commissioner of the 8th grade battalions, Shee-OW, note as well. It's as he says, Your Majesty. The 8th grade battalions also take this matter very seriously. The patrol rotation follows a fixed schedule. It's not impossible for someone to have memorized it and seized their moment to kill Xiao-Fuzi. This is a personal grudge. Anyone with grievances against this eunuch, Xiao-Fuzi, must be thoroughly investigated. Do it then. The Shen emperor laughed in anger, flinging his teacup at Shee-OW. A man died right under your noses. Instead of reflecting on your actions, you speak only of shirking responsibility. To think we actually put our safety into your... The emperor's voice went hoarse. He covered his mouth as the coughing took him. His rage seemed to scorch his very lungs. He reached down to support himself on the table, then crumbled to the ground. Your Majesty! Shrill cries of alarm issued from the palace ladies, and chaos spread like fire through the banquet hall. The Empress Dowager sank to her knees to support him. Summon the imperial physician, quickly! When Chr-yeh finally made his way back to Li Jianheng's side, the prince regarded him as his own kin. Brother of my own blood, he cried. You scared the life out of me. I've been kneeling for ages. I'm starving. Is there anything to eat? Li Jianheng motioned for someone to run and fetch some food. Standing on a veranda in the West Gardens, the pair looked toward the brightly lit hall. When His Majesty wakes, he'll ask for you again, Li Jianheng said. How did Xiao-Fuzi end up in the pond? What shit luck I have? Chr-yeh washed his snacks down with cold tea. This was a delicate matter. Xiao-Fuzi had always enjoyed Pahn Ruguy's favor. Even if someone had plotted to take his life, how could the timing dovetail so perfectly with Li Jianheng's beating? If it wasn't a premeditated attempt to kill Xiao-Fuzi but a spur-of-the-moment decision, it would have been vastly more advantageous to untie him than to kill him. Pahn Rugui and Ji-lei had reacted far too swiftly. The man's body had hardly cooled, yet they had made full use of him. And if they could pin his death on Prince Chu, so much the better. Has His Majesty spent his nights with any lady in particular recently? Chr-yeh asked offhandedly. Sure, Li Jianheng answered. Lately he favors the lady from the Wei clan. The Empress Dowager likes her too. Well then. Chr-yeh looked thoughtful. By now night had fallen, but no one dared to leave. The guests from the banquet clustered in small groups along the veranda, waiting for the emperor to wake. Shee-OW had left the courtyard at some point in the evening. When he returned, he went to wait inside the hall on the Empress Dowager's orders. After an hour, Chr-yeh saw a footman dressed in clean but simple clothes enter through the side gate, escorted by members of the 8 great battalions. "Who is that?" Chr-yeh asked. Li Jianheng craned his neck. "A footman. There are plenty here, aren't there? Why are they bringing in this one?" Even under the dim light of lanterns, Chr-yeh's sharp eyes spotted twisting burn scars marring the footman's face. His heart pounded as an ominous premonition took shape in his mind. The West Gardens are noble grounds meant to host the emperor. Those who wait upon him must please the eye. How could such a footman serve here? Sometime later, Pahn Rugui stepped out of the hall. "Summon the 8th son of the Shun clan. Bring him at once for an audience with the emperor." Oh. Uproar immediately broke out among the officials, the sounds of chatter echoing off every wall. Though no final judgment had been made on the case of Shun Wei's treason, his blackened name had spread far and wide. Zhongbo's wounds had yet to heal. Even now, Shun Wei bore the blame for the troops' defeat. That the last member of the Shun clan had escaped with his life was already a cause for resentment on the frontiers. How could he be permitted to walk free? Li Jianheng panicked. What's going on? Don't tell me they discovered something more. There's enmity between the two of you. You see red whenever you lay eyes on him. For the sake of the Xiao clan, they should keep him locked up." Chr-yeh said nothing, but merely shifted his gaze to the door and stared with rapt attention. In less than half the time it took to burn a stick of incense, a guard strode into the courtyard, followed closely by another man. His hair had grown long in the last 5 years. It cascaded down his back, secured only with a crude wooden hairpin with no crown. His worn, wide-sleeved robe hid his wrists from view, but the hands that peeked from them were fair and lustrous as porcelain. A lantern obstructed Chr-yeh's sight, but Li Jianheng dropped his teacup when Shun Zechuan walked into view. "You never told me he looked like this," Li Jianheng muttered. Chr-yeh's thumb unconsciously curled. Shun Zechuan passed before the walkway where they stood. Chr-yeh watched him with cold detachment. In that split second, he locked gazes with a pair of eyes he remembered well. Those eyes were long and narrow, their ends extending in a delicate upward curve. Even in the dim glow of the lantern, the irises glittered like lost stars. Shun Zechuan's lips seemed to curl in a hint of a smile as he glanced at Chr-yeh, so faint that once he passed, it left no trace. It had come and gone like the chill night wind. Alrighty, everyone. That concludes the readings of chapters 10 through 13 for today. Hopefully you all enjoyed them. It took me forever to read this. Oh my gosh, because I was taking so many notes. I started reading at 8:05 and it is now 10:06. My God. And the crazy thing is, it probably would have been faster if I didn't stop every few seconds to take notes. And there are a lot of things I feel like maybe I didn't even have to take notes on, but just to be as thorough as possible. And like, hopefully if someone, like if you guys bring something up, I just want to make sure I have notes for it. So I'm like trying to not take notes on every single little thing, but at the same time, take as many notes as possible. So anyway, let's go over these chapters. So of course we start out with the lovely dovely chapter Drunk, in which Shun Zechuan and Xiao Qr-yeh get into a fight. And Xiao Qr-yeh realizes pretty quickly that Shun Zechuan is not fighting with the gusto of a dying man, but of a trained man, if you will. And also that bite, as it was described, man, that gotta hurt. So anyway, I just wanted to say yay for Shun Zechuan because he got his lick back. So for anyone who may not know what to get one's lick back means, it's basically to take revenge, to pay back something that was done to you. So he was kicked in his chest. Not only did he kick Xiao Qr-yeh in his stomach, but then he got to kick him in his chest. So, you know, yay him. But anyway, after that, we realize, or we find that, you know, Shun Zechuan found Xiao Qr-yeh's ring. and it's made of bone. So he has this ring and he's had it forever now because eventually it becomes 5 years later. So we'll see when he eventually gives that back to the man. It's also revealed that clearly Xiao Qr-yeh has a drinking problem of sorts. So we'll see what goes on with that. And I'm not sure if it's a drinking problem or he just drinks every day. Because in my opinion, I don't see... Well, I mean, drinking every day is not really good for your health, but there's a difference between someone being drunken every day versus having a drink every day. Like I think about, for those of you who have seen a really old popular show, Scandal, Olivia Pope, that woman had a glass of wine every day and popcorn. That was her nutrition. Anyway, so we'll see exactly what that is. But as we continue going, we have Xiao Qr-yeh, who was going to inspect the Imperial Guard, and I immediately was like, okay, he's going to have to earn their respect, especially the older soldiers, because they were already looking down on him. So then we have on page 115, where it's clear that he wants to set a new tone or a new standard for the Imperial Army, but that's something that's going to be easier said than done. So on this page, we have like a breakdown. There's supposed to be the Supreme Commander, then underneath him, the Vice Commander, which they currently don't have, and then the Assistant Commander. And the reason why they don't have this is because they're short on men in the Imperial Army. So after Zhongbo's defeat, there was grain transport that was blocked, and that led to a food shortage in Chengdu. So grain mentioned again, yay! Anyway, the Ministry of Personnel did not pay all of their officials, and so positions in the army was halved. Like they couldn't afford to do this, if you will. So we learn a little bit about that. So anybody basically can take this commander token, which isn't really a good thing. Anyway, on page 119, I'm sorry. I meant to say, just from looking at this whole thing on page 117, when Lao Chun is talking about, how he was elevated and everything, we have this Lord Hua Shi-san. And this person is favored by the Empress Dowager. And so after what Xiao Qr-yeh says, it's clear that the Empress Dowager has just simply put a useless person in a position of power, which is something that would play in her favor for whatever. Anyway, as we continue forward, we have something that I wanted to point out, because emperors be getting on my nerves, right? So Xiao Jiming and Loo Gwahng-bye, all of them, they're leaving, right? And the emperor goes to him and, is patting him on his shoulder or whatever. And basically is like, for the Shun clan, I'm so sorry that we failed you soldiers because we didn't give the result that you wanted, basically. And he was like, I've been sick for so long and there are just so many things that my hands are tied on. And so, of course, Xiao Jiming responds very eloquently, if you will, and deferentially. And he's like, you were sick. It's important for you to take care of your health, Your Majesty. And then it says the Xianda Emperor slowly loosened his grip on Xiao Jiming. Good man. Go, he says. And for me, I was just irritated by that because you grabbed onto him and you said what you said very deliberately. And that to me was like the emperor's way of saying, this is the end result. You don't have the right to be angry. This is what it is. And like he was waiting for that very response of submittal, of acquiescence from Jiming. So that was a bit frustrating. And I just wanted to punch the emperor. Anyway, we were finally introduced to one of the 4 generals, if you guys remember. And Juyin is actually a woman. That was very exciting. I was like, okay, but remember, she was the wind storm through the scorching plains. That's pretty lit. So I'm excited about that. Anyway, this woman gifted Xiao Qr-yeh a heavy executioner's blade and gave it the name Wolf's Fang. And she's like, you should always remain vicious. So anyway, moving on to chapter 12, we have a 5-year time skip. So now just assuming okay, he's 20, Xiao Qr-yeh, and Shun Zechuan, they're adults. Basically, that's all that matters. They are adults. So we have Xiao Chr-yeh is intent on getting the Imperial Army's money, but this guy in the Ministry of Revenue is just like, I mean, we don't have the funds, and we can't, basically. And so Xiao Chr-yeh is like, really? So y'all can pay the 8th grade battalions and the what's in the names very easily, but for some reason, it's hard for y'all to pay the Imperial Army. So then we learn basically that the Empress Dowager, after the emperor had fallen sick in the early spring, she decided to order for a temple to be built in the palace so that she could recite Buddhist scriptures and gather blessings for his majesty. And so the Ministry of Works had to do large shipments of, lumber from Duanwu for construction. And in order to be cheapskates, they used the Imperial Army. I mean, that didn't mean that they didn't still have to come out of pocket for things. And so this coming out of pocket for that was the setback. And so eventually one of the ministers, Secretariat Elder Hai, opposed this plan, and the Empress immediately backed off. She's like, okay, that's fine. Meanwhile, the lumber was already brought to the capital. So to me, that was like, okay, that was deliberate. She deliberately had the Ministry of Works do this so that they would not have the money to give to the Imperial Army. She exhausted the funds even of the Ministry of Revenue for her freaking birthday by having so much money spent, and then also handing out monetary rewards as well. So this Empress is really, she's very conniving, but also at the same time, I feel like she's kind of stupid. Like, that's the vibe I'm getting, because she's doing a lot of these little things in the background to play in her favor. But to me, these things just aren't really sounding that smart thus far, but we shall see what happens. You know, like I feel like power makes people stupid, or the desire for power often makes people stupid. I'm not saying she's stupid, but I'm saying, to me, some of these things sound stupid. So we will see where things go. Anyway, Xiao Chr-yeh and Li Jianheng, who is Prince Chu, the younger brother of the emperor, they seem to have a very close relationship. So I'm glad that he has someone there that he can spend time with. And now, of course, it mentioned he has his right-hand man, Chen-yang, but I don't know the relationship between them. Anyway, Prince Chu, he's upset about that woman that Xiao Fuzi had gotten to Pahn Rugui, and so he wants to beat the shit out of Xiao Fuzi. And actually, he wants to beat him to death, but Xiao Chr-yeh is like, yeah, you can't do that, but I'll arrange for you to be able to beat him up, basically. And so this happens, and unfortunately, Xiao Fuzi ends up dead. Bruh. What in the world? And then Jile comes over and is now talking about treason, right? This matter has been escalated from just a eunuch dying or being killed to treason. I was like, okay, cool. And it's just crazy because, like Xiao Chr-yeh said, they hopped on this very quickly. Like, Jile came out of the gates like, oh, we found this issue and it's treason, and here is what this is. But I love this moment because Xiao Chr-yeh is a very smart young man, right? You know, he was described earlier as a ruffian by Jile, and, you know, people talk about him drinking too much, but he's very smart. And so he's like, like this can't fall back on Prince Chu, because if it does, then it's going to seem like he's, you know, trying to usurp the throne. It's going to escalate to that. But also, he's like, it can't come back on him either, because if it comes back on the both of them, then it's going to seem like the Xiao clan is siding with this prince in particular, which would be very bad, very, very bad for the Xiao clan, and very bad for the prince. And we'd have yet another prince probably being sentenced to death, as well as a whole clan being sentenced to death for treason or trying to usurp the throne. Meanwhile, when that's actually not what they're trying to do. And so I love the whole scheme that he set up, and basically was like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and admit to this. And I have my little sticky note here that basically says, own up to it now. avoid suspicion later. And I think that's great. He owned up to, like, I mean, he wasn't the one who did it, but he went ahead and stepped forward to go ahead and pin something on someone, right? So pinning the beating on himself, he's like, hey, it was me. So that immediately takes the eye off Prince Chu, even though Jile was like, you don't have to like take up the mantle for this just for personal reasons. So that in itself was already kind of like an indirect accusation. But anyway, you know, he was like, I'm offended by this guy because he was haughty towards me, basically. Oh my gosh. And then he goes on to say, I beat his ass, but I didn't kill him. So I just think it's quite interesting that we have the Great 8 battalions here, and we have, you know, who else? What was it? The 8 Great Battalions and the Embroidered Uniform Guard. And yet this eunuch was able to be beat and killed, you know, so he was pointing a finger as well. And so Jile and the other guy were like, Shiguan were like, wait. Like, no, ain't no way. Like, we are very diligent. And of course, the emperor is like, really? How diligent you are, but you're not taking responsibility for the fact that you don't know how this came about. So I just thought that was funny. But, you know, the emperor, he fell sick. Now he's out. And Xiao Chr-yeh, again, another point for him being very smart. I'm starting to really like his character. But he's like, does the emperor have a lady he's been seeing recently? And Prince Chu is like, yeah, this new lady that the Empress Dowager favors. So I'm like, okay, got it. So immediately we know something is up. This woman must, I don't know, there's something she might be poisoning his food, or I don't know, maybe there's, who knows? The point is, the Empress Dowager is doing something with the emperor, with this new lady that is by his side. So anyway, Xiao Chr-yeh is like, okay, Pahn Rugui and Jile jumped on this too quick. So they must have known something. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they found him and the order was for Pahn Rugui. Like, Pahn Rugui was like, okay, well then just kill him. Because even though he doted on him and everything, if there's one thing I've learned from lots of shows that I've watched, especially the more recent one, the one with Xiao Zhan, I can't remember the name of this, The Legend of Zhang Hai. Eunuchs can be very merciless. So I wouldn't be surprised if he killed his own favored eunuch, if you will. So anyway, now we get to the point where they're bringing out Shun Zechuan for what? Who knows? Is he about to like give testimony on something? I have no idea. But anyway, that's that. I hope I clearly explained everything for everyone, the details that I think were important. I am still trying to figure out how we're going to go about everything. And I'm wondering if, like, instead of sharing my thoughts in all the videos after the reading, if maybe we'll do live sessions and just discuss the things that have happened little by little. Like, these live sessions would be in the afternoon, probably like 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, at least the starting time. And we could just spend, you know, a quick few minutes, 30 minutes to an hour to discuss what has happened. And I'm wondering if this would be better than us just doing a volume 1, volume 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 recap. So you guys just let me know what you think about that. But the other thing I will say, specifically talking to my Patreoners, if we were to do something like that, though, that would change the flow of things, because technically you guys get these videos 48 hours in advance from YouTube, right? But if we're going to hold discussions, then this series would have to be released for everyone at the same time, right? That way everyone could keep up, because we can't discuss, like, I don't want us to go live and not be able to discuss certain things when Patreon has already read to a certain point, but YouTube hasn't. So I'm asking you guys, because this is one of the perks that you get from Patreon, and that's getting things 48 hours in advance, at least recordings and whatnot of the main stories, not the side stories. Those are premiering at the same time for everyone. But if you guys are okay with YouTube also getting Qingging at the same time as you, so that we can all have live discussions every few chapters just for like 30 minutes to an hour, then we can totally do that. I just think that is one thing that would be a better idea than us trying to do an end volume recap. Just because there's so much to discuss in these, even if it's not even necessarily complex, because I don't think it's too complex at the moment. Like, I'm understanding things pretty easily, even if every now and then I'm like, wait, what? And then just like go back and reread it and think through it. I'm like, okay, I got it. But there's just a lot of information, a lot of intricate details that I feel like need to be fleshed out. And so, yeah, you guys just let me know what you think. And I think that's all I have to say for today. Yes, it is. Yes. Actually, I guess I'll go ahead and say, because I know the first video of copper coins came out on Sunday. And when that video released, I had said, oh, I don't know what the release schedule for copper coins will be just yet, because I recorded this last year, right? But just in case anyone is unclear, because I've said it in some live sessions that we've had since then, there are going to be released chapters of copper coins next Sunday, and then the Sunday after that. Now, because I'm going into surgery, then you guys will be receiving copper coins chapters Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday from the 19th through the 23rd. And I believe one on the 26th as well. Depending on my recovery period, that will determine if you guys are going to next week, as the week after that, from the 26th through the 30th of January, get volume 2 in succession like that, or if we'll go back to every Sunday. It just depends on what's going on with me and my body and resting and recovering and stuff like that. So I'm reading volume 2 right now to get those videos already ready. So yeah, I think that's all. But yeah, Patreoners, let me know what you guys think about that. But also YouTubers, let me know what you think about us just doing quick little discussions. And even if you guys can't attend the live sessions, they will be there for you so that you can go back and look at them for those who may need it. So yeah. Okay, that's it. Well, I have a beautiful day and or night, and I will see you all next time. I'm thinking I'm going to go ahead and just upload a video for the next day instead of skipping that day. Let's go ahead, especially since I'm reading such a little bit.